Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are when you see this video. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It is October 19th, 2025. I have an interesting story for you today, and I'm going to bring it up right now. Turkish archaeologists believe they've uncovered a tomb of a medieval Georgian saint king. This came out the 14th, the story. Turkish archaeologists have announced the discovery of what they believe to be the tomb of Georgian king Saint Ashot I Kurapalades beneath Ardanak Castle in northeastern Turkey, though Georgian researchers say additional study is required to confirm the finding. An archaeological expedition from Van Yüzünku Yale University and Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism discovered the tomb beneath the ruins of the Church of Saints Peter and Paul in the fortress city of Ardanak. According to the Turkish team, the tomb belongs to the great Georgian king Saint Ashot I Kurapalades, who ruled during the 9th century. The discovery was made during the 2025 excavation season when archaeologists working around the church's apse uncovered 6.5-foot long, 6-foot wide vaulted tomb chamber sealed since the Middle Ages. Dr. Osman Aytekin, head of the excavation team, stated that the chamber's form, location, and historical evidence point to this being the burial place of Saint Ashot, who, according to the medieval chronicle Kartlis Sikoreba, was buried beneath the church in Ardanak following his assassination around 826 AD. However, the National Agency of Cultural Heritage Preservation of Georgia believes more research is needed. Specialists from the agency under the leadership of Professor Vakhtang Japardis were present at the archaeological excavation site, where Turkish colleagues briefed them on the ongoing work and the new discoveries. So here's the icon of him. Interesting. Of course, I hadn't heard about him, but pretty interesting. Given that the tomb contained no remains and no inscription of any kind, Georgian researchers believe that the discovery requires additional study and analysis to confirm the tomb's attribution to Ashot Kurapalades. It's interesting because from the Georgia paper, they say the National Agency of Cultural Heritage Preservation of Georgia announced that Georgian researchers believe further research is necessary to confirm whether the tomb recently unearthed at the Artanuchi fortress in Turkey indeed belongs to that. So yeah, they're saying the same thing here. He was assassinated. I wonder who put him in the tomb and sealed it. I assume his followers. I'm not sure who assassinated him. I assume if we look into that, we can find that out. But at this time, we don't know. But what's interesting is that they're interested in the medieval history and legacy of Ashot Kurapalades, who played a primary role in consolidating Georgian statehood in the 9th century. So let's look into this King Saint Ashot. Let's read about his life, find out what's going on. So, martyr Ashot Kurapalades, king of Artanuchi. In the year 787, Ashot, the son of Ardanerse, ascended the throne of Kartli. From the very beginning of his reign, he fought fiercely for the reunification of Georgia. His first step was to take advantage of the Arab Muslims' weariness and banish them from Tbilisi. 3 years passed, and under the leadership of a new ruler, the reinvigorated Muslims began to hunt for Ashot. The king was forced to flee after he delayed taking action against them. The enemy had again conquered Tbilisi. Ashot was compelled to leave Kartli, and he departed for Byzantium with his family and small army. The refugees journeyed as far as Javaheti in southern Georgia and stopped near Lake Paravani for a rest. But while they were sleeping, a Saracen army assailed their camp. The king's army was doomed, but God helped Ashot Kurapalades and his scant army. He bestowed power upon them, and they defeated an enemy that greatly outnumbered them. The king was deeply moved by God's miraculous intervention and decided that rather than journeying on to Byzantium as he had intended, he would remain in the region of Shavshet Klageti. At that time, southern Georgia was suffering great calamities. A cholera epidemic intensified the struggles of a people devastated by a ruthless enemy. Very few had survived, but that powerless and wearied remnant gladly received Ashot Kurapalades as their new leader, and the king began to restore the region at once. Ashot Kurapalades restored Artanuji Castle, which had originally been built by King Vakhtang Gorgasali, and later ravaged by the Arab general Marwan the Deaf. Ashot founded a city nearby and proclaimed it the residence of the Bagrationi royal family of Klarajeti. Lots of names in here. He also constructed a church in honor of Saints Peter and Paul. As it is written, God granted Ashot Kurapalades great strength and many victories. The region of Klarajeti took on a new life, and through the efforts of Saint Grigol of Kansa and his companions, the former wasteland was transformed into a borough bustling with churches, monasteries, and schools. Georgian noblemen soon began traveling to Klarajeti to forge their nation's future with King Ashot and the other God-fearing leaders. Ashot Kurapalades was not only a leader who campaigned vigorously for the unification of Georgia. He was truly a godly-minded man. With great honor and joy, he was the host of Father Grigol of Kansa, a heavenly man and an earthly angel. Father Grigol blessed Ashot's kingdom and his inheritance. Upon those who labored at Kansa Monastery, Ashot Kurapalades bestowed the best lands, including Shatberdi, to serve as rural estates, which would supply food for the monastery. His children, Ardners, Bagrat, and Guram, would later contribute much of their own future to the revival of the monasteries in that wilderness. So it's Udabno in Georgian. It's translated as wilderness. These deserted places where hermits made their abodes often attracted monks and pious laymen as the fame of these holy men spread. Over the centuries, with the foundation of numerous monasteries, these deserts became veritable cities and only retained the name wilderness in a figurative sense. But after some time, the usually virtuous King Ashot fell in love with a certain woman. He forgot his honor, his achievements, and his loyalty to God and the nation, and took her to Artanuji Castle, an estate that had been built for the queen. St. Grigol, however, heard about the king's adulterous relationship and became exceedingly sorrowful. He confronted the king about his behavior, and the desperate Ashot promised to leave the woman, but he could not bring himself to fulfill his promise. So Father Grigol took her to Mir Monastery and turned her over to the abbess, Mother Pebronia, without telling Ashot. Upon hearing what had happened, King Ashot pleaded with Mother Pebronia to return the woman, but the abbess refused. At long last, Ashot bowed his head to the nun and repented, saying, "Blessed is the man who is no longer alive in this world." The king rediscovered his love for God and his country, and he prepared to return to Kartli. But his plans were foiled when a certain Muslim warrior named Khalil invaded, conquering the lands of Kartli, Herekti, and Kevmo Kartli. Ashot sent his men to assemble an army, but before the troops had been gathered, the Saracens attacked and forced them to flee. The king then traveled to Nagali Gorge with the intent of enlarging his army. Some of the draftees turned out to be traitors, and when the king discovered the betrayal, it was already too late. He hid in a church, but the godless men found him and stabbed him to death in the sanctuary. They murdered him on the altar as though slaughtering a sacrificial lamb, and his blood remains there to this day. writes Sambat, the son of David, in his book Lives of the Bagrationes. Thus, the first Bagrationi king, a believer upon whom the inheritance of the Georgian people was established, was also a martyr. The Georgians took revenge on the murderers of their beloved king when the people of Doliskana had heard that Ashot had been killed. They pursued his murderers and killed them near the Cherokee River. Venerable Grigol and the Georgian people wept bitterly over the loss of their king and hope. Saint Ashot's holy relics were buried in the church of Saints Peter and Paul that he himself had built. So there you go. There you go. They are talking about they discovered this tomb beneath the ruins of the church. Saints Peter and Paul, that fortress at the fortress city of Ardana. So, to me, that tells me he was buried there by the information through the church, Orthodox Church. So he has, they said, relics, because he's a saint. Wonder where those relics have gone to. Because usually we keep the relics close by. We put them in reliquaries. We venerate them. We protect them. But his are missing. Quite a mystery. Hopefully they can find some more information on that. The academics and the archaeologists seem to be interested in that now. And of course, so is Georgia and their ministries, and I'm sure the church. Quite interesting. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for following my channel. If you have any, if you're Georgian and you have any ideas on this, please share your thoughts below this video. And all the rest, all you other people watching this who might find this interesting, maybe you have some questions, or maybe you think of that you've heard this story before, or you want to add some thoughts on it. I'd love to hear them. Thanks so much. I hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, evening. Until next time.